Chapter 1. One Last Job. Tanta stood alone atop a mostly stripped shuttle, looking out across the maze of derelict ships, overturned containers, and the strings of lights that barely illuminated them. He narrowed his eyes against a gust of swirling wind, watching as several colleagues made their way through the mess on their assigned patrol routes. A three-person team reached the far gate, shone their lights over the mangled sheet metal panels, and then turned towards the ship at the heart of the scrapyard. Ari watched them with growing disinterest until they disappeared out of view. He let his rifle fall to his side on its strap, then reached into one of his pouches for a pack of smokes. Two hurried footsteps sounded behind him as he pulled them free. He started to turn but felt an arm wrap around his neck. He tried to call out but couldn't draw in the necessary air. Panic set in as spots of light and dark pools began to dance in his vision. He struggled violently and then fell limp in his assailant's hands. The figure lowered Ari's body quietly and then rolled him off the shuttle to another person waiting on the ground. He landed with a soft thud.
"Search him,"
his attacker said in a low voice as she crouched down and scanned her surroundings. Rogue's dark clothing, a hooded cloak covering a bodysuit and mesh face mask, rendered her as little more than a shadow against the gray-black gloom of the night sky. The occasional billow of her cloak only served to break up her outline, helping her blend in. After a few seconds, a soft voice in her head said,
"He hasn't got anything, just the gun."
Rogue let out a low growl, then thought,
"Nothing? Not even a data pad?"
You're welcome to come and check for yourself.
"Forget it, just dump him in the shuttle."
Yes, ma'am.
"Don't get sassy with me, Luna. We'd be done here if we weren't trying to keep these dicks alive."
We've already got so much blood on our hands.
Rogue grunted.
"That tends to happen when you kill people for a living."
A brief hiss from the shuttle door filled the air around them, then a thud, followed by another hiss. Luna sighed, both audibly and in her mind.
We don't have to kill everyone, though, do we? Just the target.
"This isn't the time for discussion, come on."
Rogue briefly scanned her surroundings before sliding down the opposite side of the shuttle. Luna shook her head and cautiously weaved between the stripped vessel and several sheets of rusting metal to eventually emerge into a clearing. She could sense Rogue was already moving around the edge to another gap in the debris, and hurried silently to catch up. She drew level, then closed her eyes and steadied her breathing.
"Well?"
Rogue thought. Luna couldn't hide the spike of irritation in response.
Let me focus.
After a few seconds, Luna opened her eyes again and shook her head.
I can't sense anyone,
she said aloud, her voice sounding muffled behind the featureless mesh mask. Rogue glanced down the narrow pathway that led away from the clearing. A large, smooth, domed structure partially buried in the dirt stood ahead at the far end. The side facing them was half open, with a long ramp leading down the path. She could see figures, silhouettes, moving around in the brightly lit opening. She turned back to Luna and nodded.
"The ship is just up ahead. Movement at the cargo bay entrance."
So we take a side airlock, just like we agreed.
"Damn it, Luna, this is taking too long."
I don't care if it takes all night. If we're doing this, we're doing it properly.
"Those guards aren't going to be out forever. And what do you care anyway? No one is going to miss a bunch of arsehole mobsters."
This isn't about them. It's about us. You're not invincible, Rogue, and if you die, I die.
She exhaled, and a wave of calm washed over her.
With that in mind, let's stick to the plan, please?
"You're such a pain in the arse. Fine, we'll do it your way."
Rogue straightened up and glanced around the clearing. It was lined on all sides by more containers and ship components, dim light barely leaking from several other breaks in the scrap.
"Looks like there might be more openings over there."
Luna nodded.
Can you remember what you saw from the top of the shuttle? Which route leads to the ship?
They all do eventually. Some are just more circuitous.
And the patrols?
A few 3 to 5 person groups. There wasn't time to see if they followed a pattern.
All right. I'll try to feel them out as we go. Lead the way.
Rogue's boots squelched through several oily water and mud puddles as she worked around the edge of the clearing. Luna followed closely behind, avoiding them as best she could until they came to another opening. Rogue didn't break her stride as she walked between two seemingly endless piles of twisted, broken ship parts and panels of bent metal spilling out of heavily dented containers. The path before her was well-traveled. Mud jutted up from the sides of water-filled boot prints, combining with the string lights to present a clearly defined route towards the ship.
"Careless,"
Rogue thought.
Indeed.
Luna replied.
Now let's ensure we're not.
They continued, with Luna pausing approximately every 50 feet to cast around, informing Rogue the way was clear ahead as they continued. As they drew closer to the ship, Luna slowed.
Hold up.
Rogue stopped, crouched down, and glanced back at her companion.
There's someone, 2 people, a little way off yet. I can't get a good read on them. Possibly drunk or high.
Rogue nodded and started crouch walking to the point where the path turned left. She stayed low, using the remains of a crate that had clearly been used for target practice as cover, and peered out. The path led back to the ship, around to one airlock on the side closest to her, hemmed in by smaller vessels and shuttles that acted as makeshift dwellings. 2 large men sat in front of one of these, lounging around on reclaimed pilot seats and drinking from large cups. Occasionally, they would raise a toast to the spaceport in the far distance as ships were elevated to their launch positions and took off.
Drunk, or at least well on the way.
Rogue thought.
So we sneak by them.
Luna replied.
Or we take them out quick and quiet and dump them in one of these hovels. Problem solved.
No, not problem solved. Rogue, problem started.
Luna's thoughts became disorganized and scattered as her desperation grew. Unable to convey her message, she took a deep breath and tried to force herself to calm down. While Luna was distracted, Rogue slipped a knife out from under her cloak and disappeared around the corner.
Damn it, Rogue!
Luna gritted her teeth and closed her eyes, feeling Rogue's every move, thought, and emotion. Rogue moved slowly, silently, a predator on the hunt, characterized by her anger and impatience. Elsewhere, 2 others, almost indistinguishable from one another through the dizzy haze that surrounded their minds, remained oblivious. Rogue closed in for the kill, and for a brief moment, the 3 thought patterns became one. Then, they separated into a sharp pang of panic, another into fear so powerful that even Luna shivered and tried to shrink away from it. Both faded quickly as the minds that had produced them slipped into the quiet of death, those emotions replaced entirely by the sole survivor's feeling of satisfaction at a job well done. There was even a hint of enjoyment. Luna sighed.
Damn it, Rogue.
After a moment to steady her breathing and gather her thoughts, Luna turned the corner to see Rogue closing the door on one of the smaller ships. Rogue glanced over at her, and Luna could practically see and feel her companion's toothy grin and wide, wild eyes behind the mask.
Like I told you, problem solved.
Rogue thought.
Now is there anyone else around?
Luna closed her eyes and mentally cast around again.
Only the people in the cargo bay. They seem distracted by something.
She raised her hand.
There are others in the ship, sleeping, or relaxing.
Rogue nodded, then started walking.
They don't expect anyone to get inside. They think their patrols will protect them.
We're not in yet.
Luna replied, setting off after her.
We would be if we dealt with all our problems like that.
Just because the contract allows for collateral damage doesn't mean you must actively cause it.
Why not?
Because it puts us at massive risk. Not to mention that we never know what the end purpose is. You leave them with nothing to work with, and all of this would have been for naught.
The way I see it, we leave all the stuff in place. Someone else will step in and fill the vacuum. Why would you ever want to risk that?
Luna sighed.
Because whoever it is might be better. They might take this operation and turn it into something of benefit.
To whom? Us? To our kind?
Well, maybe. For all we know, someone is waiting in the wings, someone more sympathetic.
Rogue snorted.
You mean malleable?
So what if I do? If it's of benefit to the fleets as well as to this world.
This world?
Rogue growled.
No one on this world does anything to benefit anyone but themselves. Our Chaos 4 is corrupt to its core, and the more of these mobsters we wipe out, the better off everyone else will be.
You can't know that.
I can. And I do.
Luna sighed again.
Okay, let's say you're right. The problem with sudden dramatic change is that it triggers a dramatic response. Effective, lasting change takes time. As with all things, balance is the key.
Rogue shook her head but said nothing. She didn't need to. The strong emotions that Luna sensed made her companion's position clear enough. They approached the ship and followed its contours. They used what concealment they could find as they headed away from the cargo bay toward the airlock. Drawing closer to the sealed hatch, Rogue spotted a box of wires and buttons beside it. She stopped to examine it, noted the makeshift, amateurish construction, and then used one of her knives to carefully cut the wires. She tensed, listening for any sign of alarm.
Don't worry, there's nothing.
Luna thought.
Sure?
Luna sighed.
We'd know by now.
She pointed at the small cavity she'd found.
The handle's in here. Are you ready?
Rogue nodded, and Luna gave the handle a tug. The locks disengaged with a thunk, and the pair tensed, waiting for any sign or sound of an alarm. When none came, Luna opened the airlock door just enough for them to slip inside. Their eyes adjusted quickly to the darkness, allowing them to see the tiny square room they found themselves in. Suit and equipment lockers lined both sides, leading to an inner hatch on the opposite bulkhead. They moved around a bench at the center and made for the door. Luna tugged the handle, and once again the locks cycled. She held the door open far enough for Rogue to slip through and followed her into the dimly lit corridor.
Oh, gross!
Rogue thought, her nose wrinkling in disgust.
It smells like arson here.
I think that's food.
Luna replied, sealing but not locking the door behind her.
You couldn't pay me to eat it, though.
You know, I would have thought for people who coerce money out of others for a living, they'd hold themselves to a higher standard.
A derelict shipyard, a literal dumping ground, is a good place to hide. You saw how much trouble we had getting a ride out here. No one wants to come within sight of this place.
And no one profits from clearing it up either, so no one cares.
Luna stopped, tilting her head as though listening to something, then pointed down the corridor.
That way. But be careful. One of these rooms feels like it's hosting a party.
A party?
That's just what it feels like, all right? Excitement, a group of people, and that haze is there again, so they're probably drinking.
They're making this too easy.
Rogue thought as she began stalking down the corridor. Luna quickly caught up and followed her companion deeper into the ship. Before long, they could hear the sounds of celebration from somewhere up ahead. Rogue tightened her grip on the knife and stepped forward, held back by Luna's hand on her shoulder.
We need to go this way.
Luna thought and pointed to a walkway just shy of the room the commotion was coming from. Rogue's shoulders slumped.
We should...
Leave them, Rogue.
Why? They're all scumbags.
She replied, creeping along the walkway.
It's not our place to judge.
Luna raised a hand, then closed her eyes briefly.
Hold up. Guards. Up ahead. On the left. They're moving towards... No, wait.
She turned slightly and followed an unseeable movement along the corridor ahead of them.
One of them became really pissed off. I think they've been called back.
Lucky for them. Let's move.
Hold up. Don't you find it odd?
No.
Rogue snapped.
I find it good timing. Now let's go.
Rogue continued down the corridor, then to the left as Luna reluctantly followed.
47, 48, 49.
Rogue thought triumphantly as she stopped at one of the doors.
This is it.
All right. We do it just like we planned. Quick, quiet, then we slip out the way we came in.
Rogue reached under her cloak and pulled out a second knife while Luna reached for the door handle.
Ready?
Luna thought. Rogue nodded.
Ready.
Luna eased the handle down. The door clicked open. She freed her weapon from its holster as she nodded to her companion. Rogue nudged the door open, and they silently slipped into the room.